So I recently made a new character, and instead of going through the old starting zone, I went through the new one, Exile's Reach, a small island in the northern Great Sea, where heroes are forged not only for the Alliance, but the Horde as well. And while the zone was clearly intended to be an introduction to WoW and the faction/class you choose for new players, there are underlying plots, underlying pieces of lore that, as a veteran of the game, I found super interesting. So whether you are new or old, today we shall investigate the Isle of Exile's Reach. Now I should say, I am not going to give you a step-by-step of the overall storyline of the zone. There are others who have and will do that way better than I ever could. This video is just to, as I said, look into the overall island and figure out the details that are still unknown to us even after departing. But there is no better way to start a video like this than with a shred of context so we are all up to speed and all on the same page. So Exile's Reach is a small island in the northeastern section of the Great Sea. Judging by its marked location on a map, it neighbors both Kul Tiras and the Broken Isles. But recently, an expedition sent by your faction of choice has gone missing while charting the sea, and it is up to us, the player, to find where they went with only a few bumps and bruises along the way. Now, as you might have guessed from my footage, I did go through Exile's Reach on Alliance, but I did also go through it on Horde as well. And while they follow the same story beats, there are some minor differences between the two, in case you were wondering. So upon our abrupt arrival on the island, we get a quick grasp on a few things about Exile's Reach. The local Murlocs are up to no good, but they are clearly thriving in some sort of capacity by picking clean the wreckages of our and many other unfortunate vessels, which is another point to bring up. By just looking around the shoreline, it's obvious that we and those we're here to rescue are most certainly not the first to crash on this island, probably due to the same reason. I could be wrong, maybe they didn't crash land because of the storm, but regardless of what you may or may not believe, as we obsess over a few ships on a pretty sizable island, we notice something far into the distance. A statue, and ogre statue, and a neighboring fortress of clear ogre design, two indicators that these local ogres have been here for a long enough time to construct wonders not seen since Hymal on the planet of Draenor. And as we move on from the shore and move further inland, we can see that some of the locals, Quillbore, Harpies, Undead, have all been forced under the jurisdiction of these same ogres. Because as we know, if you give an ogre a piece of land, they will subjugate the hell out of it. Just look at ancient Draenor. Now, obviously, regardless of faction, we won't let this stand, but it's only after rescuing one of our allies do we realize what's actually going on. We discover that the ogres plan to resurrect a fallen dragon and are using the locals to get ahead on their plans, probably by force. And it's around now that pieces start falling before us and we must place them together. Islands, ogres, subjugation, necromancy, dragons. Well, there is only one such event in Azeroth's history where there was an overabundance of all of those things. The Second War. Now, to give an oversimplified description of a complicated war, after the Orcish Horde sacked Stormwind and began their campaigns north of Blackrock Mountain, the remaining human kingdoms united into the first rendition of the Alliance and posed an actual threat to the rampaging orcs. To try to compensate, to try and gain an edge over this new alliance, the Horde was forced to do many things. Local trolls were inducted into their ranks, dragons were enslaved, any fallen combatants from the enemy were raised from the dead by orcish warlocks, infused with the souls of an orc to fight once more, becoming the first generations of Death Knights, and, well, as you can see, there are many similarities between Exile's Reach and the Second War. Exile's Reach has trolls, it has ogres, it has necromancy, dragons, etc., etc. But being similar does not necessarily mean related. And that's true. There is no solid proof that any of this is connected, and it could just very well be a nod to Warcraft 2. However, ogres, ogre magi, ogre warlocks were once a part of the Orcish Horde and continued to serve the faction until Gul'dan's abandonment of the Horde to pursue the Tomb of Sargeras decimated their war effort. It's very possible, very possible, I mean, that these local ogres were once a part of the Orcish Horde. Maybe they were shipwrecked. Maybe they were marooned on the island by the Alliance over 20 years ago. Or maybe after Gul'dan's betrayal, maybe these ogre forces were exiled from the Horde, hence the name Exile's Reach. This idea is further backed by a local named NPC, Haroon the Exiled, an undead ally of the ogres that oddly resembles that of a standard orc warlock. So maybe, just maybe, Haroon and his ogres were once a part of the Horde, but were exiled or marooned during the Second War, and were forced to make do with what they have on the island. Although, while that is a possible scenario, it is not the only one. If we go back to Haroon the Exiled, Haroon is very large. He is a tall lad, much taller than an average orc, mind you, so maybe he isn't so much an orc or an ogre as he is something else. Maybe Haroon is a remnant of one of the various Vrykul that had a presence on the island long before that of the ogres. Maybe the island is called Exile's Reach not for the ogres, but for Haroon, who might have been exiled from Vrykul society for, I would guess, black magic. And it makes sense. Not too far from Exile's Reach is Stormheim. Stormheim has dragons, Vrykul, and is also in sailing distance of the island. So maybe Haroon was booted from Stormheim, maybe he was sent or made his way to Exile's Reach, and eventually came into contact with local ogres who once served the Horde and landed on the island for any of the reasons I listed prior. Truth be told, your guess is really as good as mine, but using what we know, this seems to be the best idea of the happenings on Exile's Reach before we ever even step foot on the Isle. If you have any questions or comments about this video, Warcraft, or its lore, you can leave them in the comment section down below, and I'll be sure to read each and every one of them. Thanks for watching.